So it's about like 6:39 in the morning on a Sunday. Many people ask me like, "Oh, why can't you go back hang out with Greg?" Um, because Greg's been trying to basically try to get back into my good graces, or at least has talked to me a couple times. And for those who don't know who Greg is, Greg's an older gentleman, probably in like his 70s, 70s, or about 70s, and he's older, and he's older, and he's really in shape, or at least he's old enough to really walk and do what he has to do. But he's an older gentleman that I would be hanging out with, old enough to be my mom's age, and was somebody I was hanging out with for a while. And he, we were like friends, and buddies, and would always go out to, we'd always go out to a restaurant and eat, and then sometimes I would pay for food and he would pay for food and stuff like that. And everybody's like, "Oh, what happened to Greg? What happened to Greg? You guys were always going out to eat. You guys were always doing this and that." But one, he's older than me. He was way older than me. He's a neighbor. He was a neighbor. He's a neighbor and somebody who lives in my building that I kind of befriended, and some people thought I should kind of start hanging out with and go for a walk with and start hanging out with and stuff like that. That I kind of befriended. That is almost like my mom's age. And we started walking out. We started taking walks and stuff, and then we started going out to pizza, and then we started going out for Chinese and going out to all these places and stuff, like friends would do, and trying to go out and do things and stuff like that. But um, Greg is one good thing about Greg that would be good for me now is that Greg is very conservative. Greg is very conservative and believes in the conservativeness of like believing in God and the conservativeness and stuff like that. But the only downside about it is that Greg is actually also gay. Greg is also gay, so Greg actually likes guys and has a thing for guys like half his age and stuff. So, like guys like that, like 18, 20 years old in high school. He pretty much has a thing for guys like that. But and he's like 70 freaking years old. So, that's a downside. Plus the fact that in the past there were issues between me and him too, where it came out to be where he would say sexual things about me. He said sexual things about me that I did not like and I was not comfortable with. He kind of said sexual things about me, and I've asked him more than once to please not say sexual things about me. We're friends, and I don't mind being your friend, but I don't want you to. Friends don't really say sexual things about each other's, about friends, and it's kind of a boundary issue I didn't want to cross with him. And I forgave him once, and then I started hanging out with him again. He started saying sexual things again, and it became more and more prevalent too. The more I hung out with him and stuff too, and use money on him. Use money on him to really kind of hang out with him and stuff, to like go out to eat and stuff, and to treat him to stuff, and for him to treat me to stuff. Because I guess the thing about me and him is that I don't want to say it's like our love language, because I'm not really in a relationship with him, but um for him it's like money is part of his language, the language that speaks to him, as far as like caring for somebody and doing stuff. He always has a thing about money and the money and value and stuff like that. And I like money and stuff too and stuff, but man, I don't want money to just become my love language. It's more, my love language is more than just money. I mean, money is a part of it for me. It's like money is always a part of my love language, but there's other parts of what love is to me, and the love language that doesn't always require money and etc. That it just lacks. And I don't want it to be with him either. I don't really want it to be with him. I mean, he's a good friend, and he's really been really, he had been a good friend. I'm not really hanging out with him as a friend anymore. He is a neighbor, and I do see him from time to time. But um, with all this stuff, this goes into the stuff I was talking about before too. because I started hanging out with him, probably months after the whole Taquana thing went down, and over the pandemic, I started hanging out with him. I started going out to eat with him and started hanging out with him. And when I was walking around town and stuff, and stuff like that, um, I was hanging out with Greg. Greg and I were hanging out and walking around town and stuff, and walking down the street and walking past Taquana's and the bookstore and stuff. And we were just walking past and doing what we had to do to just chill and breathe and, do what we had to do. So, um, but Greg is a good friend, and Greg was really really kind, and he knows, he says he knows what it's like to be without and stuff. So he has done some stuff, to really kind of provide, I would say provide, but like, kind of help me out in certain areas when it came to money factors, because obviously I don't have a lot of money. Well, neither does Greg either. Greg acts like he has a lot of money and a lot of opportunities and things, and it gets on my nerves like big time, especially when he goes into these money schemes and he's always making out better. He's always making out better than sometimes the people around him or the people that he's trying to, be there for. He's always making it out. He's always making it out where he's making out better, and he always has the better hand because he has like family and friends too that also look out for him and take him out to eat and etc. So I don't have family in the area, so I only see my family if I'm lucky maybe once a year. So I only see my mom like once a year, and that's usually during the summer. And she drops off all my stuff before the holidays. She'll drop off all the presents and stuff, and then say, "Oh, I'll see you next year," because I know I'm not going to be able to come up here during the winter and all this other stuff. So I don't get to see my mother as much or go out to eat with my mother as much. It only happens like once a year, if I'm lucky at that point. If she can get up here, and if I'm lucky, sometimes if she's lucky, maybe twice a year, but um for the most part, everything is just like, Greg's a good guy, and Greg's a neighbor. I mean, he's still a very good guy. I mean, I think he had the good intentions. I think some of his intentions were good, and some of his intentions were not so good. So, I mean, I still think for the intentions that were good, he's a good person for it. But for the intentions that were not good, I decided not to talk to him anymore and not to kind of keep that relationship going. Although he was a good friend, and we were going out to eat a lot, we were going out for pizza, we were going out to these places to do certain things, and me and Greg are no longer like that. Me and Greg are no longer like that. We're no longer friends to be in that regard. But I mean, I still go out to eat and stuff. I mean, I haven't really been out my door too much in the last couple of months because obviously, I've dealt with the loss of some people. I mean, Greg was one of the people I've kind of dealt with the loss of, is because I kind of had to end the run relationship with Greg, and Greg was kind of like the person that the friend that would kind of get me out the door and like go walking with and stuff, and he would get me out the door more, and we would get out and we would get air and we would just go for a walk, and I would be getting out and hanging out with Greg and enjoying life. But ever since Greg, that thing with Greg has stopped, and I kind of was going through the things, artistically and stuff. I kind of really haven't really gone out as much to really kind of explore or go to a store just to look and just to shop or nothing, because I just haven't, I just haven't had it in me to really go out and be seen by other people, or risk being who I would run into, and all this stuff that I'm not necessarily ready for. But just because I'm just not emotionally up for it at this point, depending on who I run into and etc. But um, at this point, I'm just trying to chill. I'm just trying to do what I need to do. I'm trying to breathe. You know, and I'm doing what I got to do, and I'm just trying to do what I have to do. And people just judge, and people do what they have to do to criticize and be rude and nasty and etc. But um, at this point, I'm just trying to chill and do what I have to do. But Greg and I are no longer friends because Greg kind of crossed boundaries as friends, and kept saying sexual things. And I don't want to look at Greg in a sexual way. I never wanted to look at Greg in a sexual way. I never was really attracted to Greg in a sexual way, or I'm not really attracted to Greg in any type of romantic way. I mean, we were just friends. It's just like, you know. I loved Greg as a friend. I mean, as a friend, I actually had a lot of love for Greg, but he's taken it to places that are just not okay for me, you know. And that's my problem. I mean, I had a lot of love for Greg, and I wanted to really, you know, be friends with Greg, and you know, unfortunately, you know, Greg kind of took advantage and kind of took advantage of my heart and my situation. And the last time I talked to him, we went out to eat and stuff, and then I said, "No, don't talk to me again." I kind of cursed him out over his family and how he gets everything he wants with his family and stuff. And I also was supposed to owe him like $20. I never gave him the $20 I owed him and stuff like that. So we never, you know, we never ended up talking after that. I ended up just kind of really yelling at him, and I don't know if the back of his mind he expects to go back to things and thinks that just water under the bridge, and I'm just, you know, enough time has passed and I've cooled off, and now he can just come back and do what he wants to do and come back into my life. But it's not necessarily just the case. I mean, obviously, I know he has his family, I know he has his friends, you know, he has other things to keep him occupied. But I don't know. I don't know if I really want to go back to the whole walking around thing and doing what we were doing, because, I mean, obviously it was nice to have a friend and nice to have money to do those things with a friend. But if I'm putting the money in towards the friend and towards doing all these things with the friend, and there's not really much money and stuff for me to be able to do the exact things I want to do, or the, you know, the things that I really need to get done, and etc. Because money's going to always treating Greg, and money's always going to this and that, where I don't have it in my pocket for me, you know. It's the same thing for Greg too, that Greg was treating me to this and that and that this and that and all this other stuff. And you know, I'm sure he was missing money in his pocket for things he needed to do too. So um but yeah, this happened, you know, during the time of like, you know, the time I fell out with Daquana. Me and Greg started being friends and stuff, and then we stopped being friends. We stopped being friends, like, you know, I think like during the summer. During the summer one year. I don't know if it was this year or like last year, we stopped being friends during the summer because he said sexual things about me, and we just had different, you know, differences of opinions and stuff. So um but I mean, Greg was a good guy. I mean, he is a good guy in some cases. But I mean, it would be nice to get out and go for a walk. It would be nice to go out and see life and do things. And you know, Greg was one of the people that would drag me out of the house, because I don't really drag myself out of the house too often. I don't always feel confident enough to go, you know, see people or face the day, or feel like I have money to do so. But you know, that's one thing about the situation too. I mean, I lost a stepfather figure. Greg and I are friends, and you know, or were friends, and then we fell out as friends. And there was the whole Taquana thing, and then there was the whole thing with the arts that blew up out of proportion, or is going to climax right now. And I can't really say what the climax is. I can't say that I'm going to have like a big mental health breakdown. I can't say anything about what the climax is going to be, because we don't get to choose our karma. We don't get to choose sometimes how things play out, and how things have played out already. Some of it was already out of my hands, and I'm doing and just happening in ways that I would have never wanted for myself or wanted to happen. So, but things are happening in different ways that they're happening, and it's just, you know. And like I said before, you know, Greg believes in God, which is good, and Greg is conservative, which is good. But the thing about me too is that I'm trying to give up my LGBT life just because I want to be more closer to God and more closer to the conservatism, because of after everything I've been kind of promoting and a part of at one point in time with the left, and how the left didn't work for me, and how the left kind of betrayed me, and kind of had some, I had a lot of issues supporting the left, that I'm now trying to support the right, and I'm not trying to support the LGBT community and stuff like that. And if Greg is obviously part of the LGBT community, and he's about that life and he supports that life, and at the same time he's also saying sexual things about me, then it's not a very comfortable or very positive situation to be in, you know, for somebody who wants to get himself out of you know, out of the, you know, the life of the LGBT stuff, you know. Um, I don't think Greg really cross dresses either. I think Greg's just a guy that, you know, that the guy that's just a guy, you know. Although grandma who's actually, you know, that's the other thing right now, is that my adopted grand well, I call her an adopted grandmother. She's like a neighbor. She's actually in the hospital right now. So, but I know last time I talked to Greg, she painted one of his nails, and one of his nails were painted. She always asks me too, can I paint your nails? Can I paint your nails? And I never let her paint my nails because I always felt it was like a feminine type of thing, and I didn't want my nails painted or nothing. Because I'm not really about that life. But Greg got his nails painted, or one of his nails painted. His thumbnail was painted. So, um, last time I saw him, and then he told me like Grandma was in the hospital. So, but I do see Greg. I mean, I give him a smile, I give him a wave, I talk to him briefly, but I haven't really hung out with him or really done much with him because I haven't really had the money or the time, or I'm just not in that place where I once was, where I can give myself fully to those time, attention, or things that are obviously affecting life and etc. So, and sometimes I forget too. I have another phone because I'm using another phone right now for my Facebook Live. Because I forget I have another phone for Facebook Lives, and I've been using a phone there lately that I've been wanting to say a lot more and etc. And the phone basically would clonk out on me because I always do just use the main phone, and I forget I have a phone for at least Facebook. At least Facebook and Facebook Lives I have a phone for. I can't really text with it. I can't send videos. I can't do any of that because I don't have the service to be able to do that anymore. But anyways, I just wanted to get that off my chest. But that's basically what happened with Greg. For those who always wonder what happened to my buddy Greg there, did he pass away? Is he all right? No, Greg's good. Greg's a neighbor, and he always he always makes out very well. So I'm sure even though he's not talking to me, his family is treating him very nicely. I mean, he had a friend in the building too that kind of moved out of the building. I mean, she moved out of the building a couple months ago when I was kind of walking through and stuff, and she kind of was moving out of the building and moving her furniture and stuff and getting out of the building and stuff and out of the situation. Um, so she's moving, and so she moved and stuff. So I know Greg's kind of like missing her and kind of missing his some of his friend circle because things are changing for Greg as they're changing for me and etc. So, but that's basically just what happened to Greg. Greg, was a good friend. I mean, Greg kind of got me out of a couple of messes. He kind of, he paid for Chinese food for me one time when my card bounced and stuff. He was a very good friend to me. I know I'm not gonna lie. My card kind of, well, I don't want to say my card bounced, but my card basically had some discrepancies on it, and the bank had to lock my card. So, and it happened just after I was trying to get some groceries and stuff for the house at one point in time. So. Greg actually, we were going to go for Chinese food, and Greg could have said, no, we're not going to go for Chinese food. But Greg Greg actually got us Chinese food. He bought Chinese food for the both of us. So, that was really nice of him. Greg can be a really nice guy, but the way Greg always makes out well, and he always kind of rubs it in people's faces that, oh, he's making out well financially and stuff like that. It got on my nerves. I mean, I make out well financially too, especially when I'm on my own, and I think being on my own is more prevalent to do at this point in time because I think me and Greg together we kind of bump heads a little bit because we both want things our way, and we both are used to being spoiled and people spending money on us and doing what we do and stuff like that. So, um, but anyways, just wanted to get that off my chest, and that's basically what happened to Greg. Is Greg was also a big factor of the time the last couple of years where I was hanging out after the situation with Taquanas, and then this whole arts thing that happened. So Greg and I had fallen out too at that point in time too. So Greg and I are no longer, we're no longer talking to each other totally as friends, but we are still neighbors. So I do still see Greg and have no choice to see Greg. I mean, I obviously if we were dating and stuff, and if we were dating, I mean, I'm not gonna say we are gonna date, but if we were dating and stuff, I can imagine how people who would date in the building and stuff. I could imagine how it is to like date a neighbor and then basically have it go bad when you're actually dating and stuff, and then say and then have it blow up and blow up, and then still have to see that person as a neighbor. You know what I'm saying? You still have to see that person day to day, and you still have to live, in that facility with that person. So, um, but I just wanted to get that off my chest. That I know. I mean, and Greg's a good guy and stuff. I just don't hang out with Greg because Greg does take advantage a little bit, and that's where Greg and I have the issues, and that's where Greg has issues, and I just can't deal with it anymore. I mean, I have a love language. I do have a love language. I do like when people spend money on me and stuff, but I think it's more than that. I think I've realized that's part of my love language, but I think there's more to my love language than just a money factor, just a fickle portion of money and how money comes and goes. I think there's more to me than just my love language or just the language of how people kind of interact with me that really speaks to me, and it's more than just about money. Some of it's like emotional support and stuff like that. And Greg was never, see, Greg's never really an artist. Greg's not an artist and stuff, and Greg's not an artist and stuff, and Greg doesn't really understand the arts and really doesn't really give a two flying fucks about the arts and stuff, or doesn't really he never really gave a care about poetry and stuff or about much of that. He just always wanted to go out to eat and stuff too. I mean, obviously with Greg's age too, he's closer to retirement and stuff, and I still have a life where I'm still trying to figure out if I can build a brand or if I can build something or if I have to get a job or if I have to figure out something to maintain and go forward in my life because I'm only 35 going on 36. Greg was like 77 or 7, at least in the 70s at least years old. So I mean I'm obviously getting up there too in age, but I'm still not as old as Greg. I'm still not as old as Greg, and I'm still not as you know, just I don't know what the word is, but I'm just still not there. So I don't know, but that's basically what's going on with Greg. And I know my situation is that my stepfather was older too. My stepfather was an older gentleman. My stepfather was always looked like a very older gentleman back in the day too. If you saw my stepfather, he always looked like an old man, and he was old man Vince from Virginia. Always liked to go hunting, and always would like to go hunting, and and was always had a way about him. Always had a way about him. So that's one thing too, is that Greg kind of reminds me a bit of like my stepfather a little bit, kind of just like just an older gentleman that seem to have seem to be a lot of fun, and stuff like that too. But I don't know. But Greg and I are not really going to be hanging out again at this time. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to change my mind in the future and decide if I'm going to really hang out with Greg again, because I haven't really decided if that's going to be the case. But um, Greg and I, Greg and I right now are just we got some issues. So, but yeah, just wanted to get that off my chest.